While SUVs are more popular than ever, MPVs still appeal to a large number of buyers. So, do you want to take a guess at Britain's favourite 7-seat MPV?
I wonder how many of you correctly guessed this. It's the Vauxhall Zafira Tourer, and to help it keep its special place in the nation's hearts, Vauxhall have treated it to a little revamp.
It's lost its distinctive boomerang headlamps for a new corporate pair and has a wider grille, just like you'll find on the Astra.
In here is where you find the biggest change though. The old model had loads of fiddly, quite hard to read buttons, and everything has been simplified on this. It's just all here in the centre, along with a very easy to use touchscreen, which is far more intuitive. It just looks far cleaner. However, the button that I'm most fond of is this one. Let's just press this button and see what happens.
Connecting to OnStar.
So OnStar is Vauxhall's kind of concierge service. It comes fitted as standard and connects you to somebody who can help you with all kinds of things.
With the facelift, Vauxhall has cut the number of trim levels from 7 to 6, but it is quite confusing, with some desirable equipment offered on some trims but not on others. Entry-level design gets alloys, front and rear parking sensors, a colour touchscreen with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto and Vauxhall OnStar, which is good. We'd avoid the SRI model and the top spec Elite and go for the mid-range Techline, which adds SatNav and FlexRail, which is extra console storage to you and me.
But what isn't quite so brilliant is the functionality in here. The French MPVs definitely have it when it comes to practicality. Vauxhall say there are over 30 different kind of cubby holes and storage areas. Let's just say perhaps not all of them are as useful as they could be. Yes, there are good sized door bins, really good sized cup holders, and I like this little storage area here with a little flip down compartment with your USB port in. However, the glove box is absolutely tiny, and really the whole thing around functionality just isn't as well thought out as with the French MPVs. Now, like many MPVs, this doesn't have a sliding door, which is a real shame because they do make getting in and out with a family so much easier. However, once you're in here, well, there's plenty of space for both adults and children. You get 2 sets of ISOFIX points on either of the outer seats. Now, you're not going to get 3 full-size child seats across the back here because of the width, and overall I would say that the space isn't as good as in the back of the Citroën Grand C4 Picasso. Now, to get into the back, you push this seat forward. It's not really something that I think the children are going to attempt to do on their own because it's really pretty heavy. And as for getting into the back seats, well, let's just say I'm not going to try. I think that's something best reserved for the smaller members of the family. So around here at the back, let's flip the tailgate, which is light and very easy to use, and it reveals a really good load space, certainly on a par with that of its rivals. Now look, of course, when you've got this in full 7-seat mode, you have a very small load area here, but that's the trade-off that you have to make. However, there are some really great touches in this boot. I like the carpet that folds over the 2 seats in the back row, just keeping them nice and covered. And there's also a really handy little compartment in here to store this in when you're not using it. Very sensible. However, when you stand back and take a look at the actual width of the opening, you can see that it's fairly narrow. I think you could struggle getting larger buggies, bigger bikes into the back of that, which is a shame.
Now, while the specifications are a bit confusing, the engines are most definitely not. There's just 1 petrol and 2 diesels, along with a choice of manual and automatic gearboxes.
Now, we've got the 1.4 litre petrol engine here, and whilst that does sound like a small engine for what is, after all, a large car, it's actually not too bad. Now, the turbo on it is, of course, a big bonus, and it helps the 138 brake horsepower along nicely, although that does cause a bit of delay between pressing the accelerator and moving away when you're travelling at low speeds. Now, it can get a little bit noisy on the motorway, but when it's mated to this 6-speed gearbox, it's pretty quiet when it's cruising. Okay, it's a little bit revvy around 70 miles per hour, but at city speeds or when you're cruising at 50, it's really quiet and quite relaxing.
Despite all this, it's probably not the engine we'd go for because the 1.6 litre diesel is the pick of the range. While Vauxhall will sell you a 2 litre diesel, the 1.6 is quiet enough and should return around 50 miles to the gallon against a claimed 62. The 1.4 litre is smooth, but we've been getting mid-30s for fuel consumption, which isn't ideal.
Now, the Zafira Tourer is a comfortable car to drive. There's plenty of adjustment in the steering wheel and also in the seats, which is brilliant for those long holiday journeys. And the ride itself is supple enough. The steering is light, but it is accurate. And although the gearbox could be slicker, because it just feels a bit too sticky for me, when you factor in the minimal wind noise and minimal tyre noise, overall being behind the wheel is a really nice experience.
However, there are a few problems. Don't be tempted by the higher spec models because they're not only quite expensive, but they also seem to miss out on key equipment. A reversing camera, crucial on a large 7-seat MPV, is an option on every model.
And you'll find that a reversing camera may well come in handy. It's just quite annoying because visibility, surprisingly, isn't the best in this car. Out front, of course, it's fine, but at the back, thanks to those quite large pillars, reversing into spaces can be a bit tricky even with the parking sensors.
While the Zafira is good enough to drive, it's not as good to drive as the Ford S-Max, nor as cosseting to drive as the Citroën. But while looks aren't too important for this type of car, you can't help but remind yourself that both the Citroën and the Renault Grand Scenic do the job well and add a bit of style too. But despite the negatives, the Zafira is still a good all-round MPV and should definitely be on your list. Another to consider is the Ford S-Max, and you can watch our video review here. To watch more MPV reviews, click on the playlist, and don't forget to press our logo to subscribe.